to the very first episode of Seeking the Truth, the JFK assassination. And excited day here.
Woo!
Jesus. We are going to discuss today probably what a lot of, at least people our age, how we were introduced to the whole Kennedy assassination was the Oliver Stone film in 1991 titled JFK. Yeah. I'll go first, and then you can tell me what you thought when you saw it. But when I first saw it, I remember seeing it again as a kid, and it blew me away that this is something that actually happened and was essentially covered up, and all the stuff that Oliver Stone put into it. And that's the way I was introduced into it. So immediately I threw my hands up and say, that's a conspiracy. The government lied to us. This is all, there's all some. Now, of course, as I got older and kind of looked at the facts, obviously some of them don't hold up. And we'll get into that in a minute. But that was kind of where I was introduced into it. And I remember right after watching it, I asked my grandparents, I said, because, obviously they were around at that time, do you think that Kennedy's assassination, was there something else going on? And my granddaddy just told me really without hesitation. He said, Jack, they did all these theories, and they said it could happen. So they believed that that's what happened. And, again, and that's when I guess I started to question it. So I started to look into it, and that's some of the stuff. And again, we're going to cover that not only in this episode, but more episodes to come. But that's kind of how I was introduced to the film and the whole JFK assassination and all the events that happened on that day. But, that was my perspective. When did you see it?
It was in the night when I was, I guess, a kid. I don't remember exactly. Probably was a teenager at the time when I saw it. And I didn't know, I wouldn't say my parents talked a lot about it. And I will say this, you had the benefit of being obviously in the city and the state in which it actually the event occurred.
Yeah.
I was raised and grew up in Chicago, so I was removed from that in that sense. And as I grew older and got into some conspiracy theories, stuff like that, I read a little more about the event, and as far as the film goes, like I said, I don't remember exactly when I saw it, especially all the way through for the first time. And as a film buff, even back then, as a teenager and as a young man, I knew, films took creative license and stuff like that. And the older you get and, the more critical thinking you put into it, you figure out that, okay, well, that can't be right, or, this or that, or you start looking at the actual Warren Commission report or books out there like High Treason or something like that. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, you're looking at it from different angles, and you're saying, okay, something like you said doesn't add up.
Yeah, and it's funny too you brought that up because it was here. Grew up and when I went to school, especially elementary school, I was in Mesquite, Texas, and I remember it coming up. But the teacher, all it just said is that Kennedy was our president. He was assassinated in Dallas. It occurred in 1963, and basically told us the gist that he was shot, by an assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, and it didn't dive much else into it.
Really?
We just kind of moved on from it. So obviously either we weren't supposed to know about conspiracies then, or the teacher just didn't believe it or didn't feel it was relevant or whatever. But yeah, that was...
that's about all I got. So yeah. Even here in Dallas, you guys got... Okay.
But, like I said, the older that I've gotten, and again, and I said this in the intro to this series, was Wayne Knight is in it. Wayne Knight, right, Newman?
Yeah.
Wayne Knight. He's one of
Garrison's guys.
Garrison's boys,
Costner.
Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
And they're talking about something. I can't say exactly. I don't know line for line. But what he said is that there's a lot of smoke there, but there is fire. And I believe that's the case not only in the movie, but in the whole JFK assassination story. But there are definitely some things there that, I can name off the top of my head this right. Jack Ruby, I don't think had that big of a part in the whole Kennedy thing. I think he showed at one point running around Dealey Plaza. From what I understand, he wasn't anywhere near there. There was another scene where they were talking about they couldn't find the bullet, and they said all of a sudden it showed up on the hospital bed, and it showed Jack Ruby planting a bullet So, I mean, that's obviously blatant stuff that was not true. And then there's a great documentary that the History Channel did, and they basically debunked this whole movie. You know, they were talking about the magic bullet and stuff like that. And what they were saying is that Kennedy wasn't sitting right next to Governor Conley in the car, and that's what shows the bullet. But this is all stuff that was plucked from the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission rushed through the whole thing, and they came up with this magic bullet theory that it must have changed directions and did all this crazy stuff. And it's I have not had the pleasure of reading the whole Warren Commission. I had a friend of mine who actually had it in his library, and I glanced at it, and I asked him if he read it, and he said he read it all the way through, and he said it's hard to read because it doesn't ask certain questions. It contradicts itself. It jumps from here to here. And that really fuels conspiracy. Right. If they'd have done it right, maybe we wouldn't even be sitting here. Yeah. You know, and my big question, I know, and it says it in the movie too. Why was Allen Dulles, part of the Warren Commission? Kennedy excused him, basically fired him. So why would he go in there with, I'm not going to be biased in any direction? I just don't know why he would be part of it.
Well, again, this is more your bag than mine. In as far as, you've done the bulk of the research on this. I'm not familiar so much with the historical the characters involved and stuff like that. The persons involved, I should say. But yeah, I mean, outside of characters like, I don't know, Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau, certain characters that, obviously were probably, even if they were real people, some of the characters, the interaction with Jim Garrison was fictitious and stuff like that. John Candy's character,
I think now that was real, because the guy, I don't know the guy's name. I don't remember it from the movie or in historical faction, but that was a spot on look. John Candy looked just like this lawyer from New Orleans.
I did look him up, and yeah, dead on.
And that guy, from what I've read too, is kind of shady.
Really?
Yeah, he's a little shady. Why do you think they went to him to represent Oswald?
Yeah.
But no, it's a great movie. It's a very interesting movie, and I think people get what they get from it. There are different perspectives on it. We see certain things in there. There's some humor in there. We won't go into those, but, but it's about Jim Garrison's book. And Jim Garrison, before all this, was a well-respected guy. He was a district attorney in New Orleans. He had held the office for, now that I'm not, we do this a lot on the fly, so don't, badger me on this. But I think he held the office for a while, and there was no signs of him ever losing it, not for the foreseeable future. But then, he really respected Kennedy. He loved him as a president, was devastated when he was shot and killed. And once he decided to start digging around and he started finding things, he felt like he had to go to trial. It's a little different from what happened in real life. And I think Oliver Stone changed it from the book as well. He didn't have much of a case at all. He says it in the movie. He really didn't. But he felt like, if I went to trial, maybe I can shake something loose.
The pot. Yeah, I get that.
And he claims and I love the scene with him and, Donald Sutherland, Mr. X.
Yeah.
They say that there's a guy out there that was X, and I think they identified him, but then they've discredited it, and they've said that he was giving him a bunch of misinformation.
Well, again, that could be misinformation.
Who knows? Who knows? As far as, the whole thing is centered around, it was a coup d'etat, that it was all the way up to LBJ and, quote unquote, what they said, sacred cows of intel. They wanted to go to war. They had certain ways of doing things.
Yeah, the military industrial complex.
Yes, yeah. Kennedy was against all of that.
Right.
The older I've gotten, I really don't believe that LBJ had anything to do with it, honestly. He wanted to be president, and he lost the bid, ended up being on the card with Kennedy. They say they didn't get along. and I've read both sides of the story on that. I don't see LBJ sitting in a room with whoever concocted this and said, I want to be a part of this. You get rid of him, I'll go to war. It is, though, kind of interesting that he does kind of reverse what Kennedy was going to do. Kennedy was going to, pull out of Vietnam because it was a losing battle.
Yeah, but there again, the influence and power of lobby groups and stuff like that, who might have been pushing on him when he assumed the position of the office.
Yeah.
So.
And then honestly, too, LBJ did a lot of stuff for the poor, for poverty, for, minority, groups out there. He did a lot of stuff, and who knows if Kennedy would have done that or not. Kennedy was up against the wall a lot. He had a lot of stuff going on, and everybody thinks that he mishandled the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Well, and don't forget his brother, took on...
he took a lot of heat for appointing his brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then going after the mafia.
Yeah. And there's some interesting theories there, Appointed his brother's, Robert. And Robert was a guy that didn't, if he was going to go after something, he was going to go. He was going to hit his head down and he was going to come at you with everything he had. Did the mafia have something to do with it? That is a very interesting theory. Did the government have some kind of hand in that? I can't describe that. I know, like I said, in the whole movie, it is centered around what they say was a coup d'etat.
Yeah.
That it was, like you said, the military industrial period. People, sacred cows, people that have money and they wanted to make more money. They wanted to profit.
Yeah.
And Kennedy didn't want to go to war. It's just, this whole era is a very interesting time. Like we said, both Kennedys were assassinated and Martin Luther King.
Right. Well, you had a lot going on. You had the Vietnam War. You had the space program. You had the race riots. There was
civil rights movement.
Yeah, there was just a lot of social upheaval, and whenever you have something like that, you just by that virtue of that, I guess, you have various groups who are trying to, in some ways, rightfully so, trying to get power to influence and move things in a certain direction, and I think. Anytime you have that, like you were talking about LBJ, maybe he didn't want to escalate the war in Vietnam. Maybe that was because his hand was forced, by people in power. I know a little bit about the mafia side of things. Santos Trafficante in Florida, Giancana in Chicago, and then you had Carlos Marcello in Louisiana, and a lot of people think that. Or some people think who were the mafia, in which case, if they were involved, those three headed all that up.
Well, because Robert was looking to go after Hoffa.
Yeah.
And Teamsters was well known to having mafia money in there.
Yeah.
And giving money to the mafia, basically.
Yeah. It's all money. It's all power.
So there, and we'll try to dive into that. We'll, research it and all that. But I don't think you've given your opinion yet as far as what do you think about the movie? Is there some truth there? Is there some not truth there? What is your theory as far as what happened?
I believe that there was, as I said, there's multiple organizations of people involved. I think Stone did his best when researching it to commit it to film. But again, I think there was probably quite a few aspects of it that were embellished, obviously. Of course, you had Joe Pesci as the David Ferry character, Clay Shaw, and stuff like how many of those conversations were factually accurate and the things, said that were done and all that, I can't say. I don't know enough about it to say that. But as far as the film goes itself, I would say, it's definitely worth viewing to get a perspective on it, to get an overall understanding. But you have to vet it. You got to research it.
Don't go into it believing everything you see.
No, and it's true all of Hollywood. Whatever you're watching, especially when it comes to historical things.
There's one big centerpiece, and they actually did a little documentary on it. I had a Blu-ray with these extra features on it, and they had a documentary, I guess around or after the time it came out, that it's called The Accident List. And we're talking about doing an episode on that. It's a list of people that have mysteriously died, a one car accident, an accidental overdose, that saw something, heard something that was very crucial evidence. Like there's a guy, and again, don't quote me on this. He was working at there was a little outpost station at the time behind the grassy knoll where all the trains went through, and he testified and had said that he had saw some men get out of the car, go by the fence, and then he said now something happened. He said he can't describe, but then all of a sudden it was chaos, and those guys ran back to their car and left. And when Garrison started to research this, wanted to question him, found that he died. It was a single car accident.
Yes, and stuff like that. You start digging deep on stuff like that, and you wonder, like I said, the accident list, which is probably another video we're going to take a look at doing here very shortly. I think Stone, his reach might have exceeded his grasp in certain ways. You know, and it's, again, I know I keep going back to this, but anyone doing any kind of historical film, docudrama, whatever you want to call it, documentary or fictional, film about the what happened, they're going to have their own biases. They're going to come from their own places in life, have their own views, and no matter what, that is going to seep into what you're doing.
Yes.
It's going to affect it. You can't just do it totally objectively. I can't believe that. So Stone injected his project with some of his own personal,
what he believed what happened.
Yeah, I believe that. One thing we probably touch on too at some point, some people would say it's extraneous. I don't think so. Is Marilyn Monroe's involvement?
That's interesting.
Because a lot of people believe that that wasn't an accidental overdose or anything like that. That she was, from what she knew.
There's a very good book, and it's actually was turned into a miniseries on Hulu. It's called 11/22/63. It was a Stephen King book about going through a wormhole, time travel. Read the book, saw the series. It's a great book. At the very end, his epilogue or whatever they call it, he said he did hours and hours and hours and hours of research as far as what Dallas and Fort Worth, all the the geographic area, and obviously the Kennedy assassination. And he said he was 90 or 95% certain that Oswald acted alone. And there's a name he mentioned, and I can't tell you right now off the top of my head, but he said that guy needs to be researched, because if that guy turns out to be something different than what the facts say, my perspective would change 100%.
Okay.
So there's again, this is a guy, basically deals with horror books. Wanted to do one, I guess, about time travel. There was, and it was no horror in it. So, I mean, it was something he wanted to do, I guess, but he researched this extensively, and that's what he came up with,
There's a book, the author of which escapes me right now, but I've got it. It's called High Treason. I've held on to it for a little bit, and it's one of the definitive books, I guess, on the JFK assassination. I need to take a look at it, revisit it, and I'm going to be doing that, as we go through this series, trying to gain a different or better perspective on this. Once again, there's so many angles, and as far as the film goes, I think overarching, I think Stone got it right. There's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
I believe that. I don't believe Oswald acted alone, if that's what you're asking me, or anyone would. No, I don't believe that. As far as the exact names of the people involved, or the people he pointed the finger at in the film, that could be subject to debate. The generals, the corporals, the people involved in the military, the various politicians and whatnot. Yeah. And up into including the mafia and
CIA, FBI. He accused everybody under the sun, basically.
Just about.
The other thing that's interesting is that when he came out and said he was going to come out with JFK, all of a sudden critics and stuff started slamming it. This movie's terrible. Never did that before until they had seen, the cut. Why were they so upset that he was going to do this? And you can argue, don't taintish, JFK's, but why go through all that?
Well, and that's the hard part, because if we start opening up that Pandora's box. You start, getting into
we're already walking in the door, man.
Yeah.
Now we've got several doors to look in here.
You start getting into, okay, well, who's pulling the strings to some of the more influential people in media and entertainment and things like that. So you start getting into, and then the tree branches start to go everywhere. So, and we could definitely get into all that, but I mean, just holding on to what we've got right now and zeroing in on that. Yeah, if you're asking me about the film itself, like I said, I think in sum total, he's on the right track.
And stuff, yeah.
But yeah,
there is a very big segment there that, and I have done no research on this, and it's something that I think I want to start diving into. Is, in the film, they claim that Oswald may or may not have been even at the window with the rifle. They were talking about how people had seen him here, seen him there. And I don't really question that. I think he was there in some capacity. I do question or not because I think it was an old store manager of ours, and I won't mention his name, but he had a conversation with me that I think either his dad or somebody knew Officer Tippett, the officer that was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
He mentioned some things to me, and again, I have to research this, and it's been a while since he told me this, but he had mentioned some things that there was a lot of grumbling that Oswald wasn't even there, that he did not shoot Tippett. And I have no facts on that. I'm not saying he did or he didn't. That's definitely an area that I want to start to look at. And again, that'll be an episode later, but I'm bringing it up because it is part of the film where they kind of question or not whether Oswald was even at the window or not, or whether he shot Tippett. And the other thing, it's funny because in the movie they say it's like 5.3 seconds, 3 shots or something. And of course they say you can't do it. Well, then they've come out and said, no, Oswald did it in like 6.8 seconds. There's a guy, and again, can't quote it, but it was in a documentary where he said, everybody wants to focus on it was 3 shots in 5 seconds, 3 shots, 3 shots in 10 seconds. It doesn't matter. The first shot, 2 shots have to happen within 3.5 seconds. And it almost can't be done. So, again, we're just 2 guys. Dealey Plaza's in our backyard. We've talked about possibly going there on an episode. At the end of the day, we're going to need some help. So I ask you that question. Is there any information that you've looked at or let's come up with a theory together? Because in the end, it's just going to be our theory. It's not like we're going to come to a definitive truth.
No.
That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's going to be fun to talk about and look into because there's thousands of theories out there. This movie has sparked a lot of them.
Yes.
And again, like I said, before we did the intro video, I decided to look. And I've done a lot of research, but evidently I have only scratched the surface. So if there's areas you think that we need to talk about or we need to look at, let us know.
Yeah.
All right, we need your help out there because, again, this is not like Bigfoot where we can go out and see a Bigfoot, which, again, seeing a Bigfoot is very remote as well.
Sure.
But there's more of a chance of seeking the truth of that than there is to finding the truth of what happened that day.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened, almost 60 years ago.
Yes.
So, but we want to do this. It's an interesting topic to talk about. So if you help us out, let us know. Let us know your comments. Give us your own theories, some areas that we need to look at. But this was episode 1, and keep a lookout for more to come. Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Search for the truth.
Good night and good luck.